We're on.
Okay. Got it. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, and the first item obviously is approval of agenda and order of business. And we did have one thing, Dan, you wanted to add, was strategic workshop on February 15th.
Yeah, just to look at it, setting a date with council, because we're planning on February 17th for the first budget meeting in the series. And so we know that we need to get a strategic session in prior to that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we'll propose a date for consideration.
Yeah. Anybody, anything else to add to the agenda?
I do.
Yeah.
Under correspondence, I received something this morning, fire service follow-ups.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Somebody want to approve the agenda as amended? Moved. Seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. I'm not aware of any public input, but is there any, Jennifer?
Yeah.
Oh, we have that letter.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, you're gonna read it?
Okay, so it's from Ryan Cameron, and let me get to the top of it. Hello, to be read to concerned Chester Municipal Council members. I have formally submitted a request to change the name Windsor Road to North Chester, as I feel the name Windsor Road is confusing as a community is not a road. Roads are for the purpose of conveyance from one place to another, and a community is usually an entity that contains roads, streets, avenues, and highways. This name confusion has caused me to lose packages, have service people end up on the other side of the province when attempting to find my address, and multiple instances of geomatic services like Google Maps putting the wrong address on my property. Since the area of Windsor Road runs entirely and precisely north of Chester, I've opted to recommend the name North Chester instead, as this is clear and unmistakable with other community names and connotes as an association with our municipality. I hope council and my community members will consider supporting this change request. Sincerely, Ryan Cameron, Windsor Road.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Sharon has something to say, but there's probably a significant process involved in doing that. Road names in our own municipality that at least require petitions or something, and for changes. And this one here being a provincial road, I'm not sure how that works.
But it's interesting because it's called Chester Road on the other side.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it's a Highway 14.
Yeah, really, that's his real name.
So the name is a local name. Is it an official provincial name?
Yes.
Well, Highway 14 is all it really is.
Where does the Chester Road stop and the Windsor Road begin?
It would be just past the landfill, near the county line.
Okay. Anyway.
But that's just local. That's just the way people locals view it. Is
I know. Go ahead, Sharon. Sorry.
Well, yeah, I was in touch with Ryan regarding this, and I do not support this request at this time. This is his individual opinion, and I feel quite confident that the majority of residents of Windsor Road do not want this changed at this time. This is the first I've heard about such a request. So I don't think it would warrant further action at this time. To initiate a petition for one person, I don't feel at this time that we should go ahead and do that.
okay. So then it's sort of the ball's in his park. If he wants to go out and gain support, then that's up to him.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, to be clear, he wasn't actually trying to change the name of the road. I think he was trying to change the name of the community, which is a bit different. So, but I agree with what Sharon's saying that would be a lot of people involved in that community. But
Yeah.
not a road.
So we'd have to hear from more people. Yeah.
Yeah. The fact is, our address is actually for, Canada Post and mail. It's whatever your civic number is, like 821 Highway 14, and the community is Windsor Road. I know I get a lot of mail by courier and even, from out of Canada, and I've never had an issue, and mine's just, a lower civic number. But anyway, that was his request, and after talking to him, he said he was going to go ahead, so that's his, prerogative to do that.
Yeah. Okay, so there's no direction to staff to take any action.
One thing I've learned in this job is people are very attached to their community names. It's not something you want to just change lightly.
No, no, you'd want to hear from more than one person.
Yeah, and I've spoken to actually some of the elders in the community, someone I call the mayor of Windsor Road, and he was pretty disturbed about that. So I know certainly New Ross at one time, they had a movement that they wanted to change the name to Charing Cross.
It is Charing Cross, actually.
But there's a sign up that says New Ross. So, I mean, I don't know that we want.
Yes.
Anyway, that's all I'll say. I don't intend to pursue this at this time.
Tina?
Yeah, so just to mention, the Charing Cross sign, from my understanding, was removed by an unknown person. I believe I was told, I was told, so I understand it was cut down, removed with a chainsaw at whatever time. But again, that doesn't negate the fact that it is Charing Cross in that particular area. But it certainly piques my interest when we talk about changing community names and the process and petition community engagement, when it wasn't too long ago, maybe a few years, if I look at my files, where I was exploring how we were able to see the change of a boundary for a particular community in my district. And the majority of the people on the screen or at the table now will recall that discussion and the presentation and correspondence. But I just find it interesting how something change.
Okay, so no direction to staff. So we're on to the minutes of the previous meeting, January the 20th. Any errors or omissions there, people? If not, a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Public presentations, I'm not aware of any. Okay, correspondence 7.1. Municipality District Lunenburg remote operating budget, Chester's portion. So I guess we would need to recommend the approval of that budget.
Correct. And I don't think there was a significant change to the budget. There's a small increase. Part of that increase just reflects an inclusion of a contingency in there so that if there is an emergency, CAOs have an ability to access a $10,000 contingency if they're operating as the REMO emergency manager. So that's really the only change. It's just a contingency of that. And there was some minor changes in terms of benefits and salaries for cost of living kind of.
Somebody prepared to move, we recommend the approval?
Just before we do, I think there's also the possibility of a $3,000 increase to the search and rescue. It's in there, but it's not been approved, or to my knowledge, it's just in there in case. Anyway, there's some research has to be done onto it, but that's also addition in the budget.
That's
So I'll make
correct.
the motion to approve.
Seconder? Seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. District grants. Derek, you tell me you got that all sorted out?
Yes, Sharon and Andre and I have spoken, and we've each agreed that we would, from our grant budgets, contribute $500 each for approve up to $1,500 for that request.
Okay, so we want to recommend that to council?
I would move we do that if that's the approach, yeah.
Seconder?
I'll second it.
Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, information report, corporate strategic management, year-end fire department call report. I gather. Oh, there's Bruce.
Yeah.
How you doing? Morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I just wanted to go over a couple of points. This is an information report only. There's no request for decision, but on an annual basis, we do report the number of calls from our fire departments. So just the continuation of we're handling our fire calls and fire emergencies through our 7 fire departments. The total number of calls across the municipality increased slightly from 466 in 2020 to 483 in 2021. That is still continuing to be far below the pre-pandemic level of 809 in 2019. Most of that is coming from the lack of medical calls, which I'll talk a little bit about. Structure fires did increase significantly though in 2021 with 23 incidents reported, and that's now up from 2.4% to 4.7% of our total calls. The non-structural fires, those are chimney, grass, vehicle fires, did also, they decreased actually with only 58 incidents reported. They do represent about 12% of our total calls in the municipality. With respect to the medical calls, we did resume after training and issuing of more personal protective equipment to our fire departments. The number of medical calls did increase slightly. And they're now responding to what we would call critical life-threatening calls or paramedic request calls. So we're starting to see a little bit more of that coming back. The municipality has been issuing KN95 and N95 masks, and also been trying to, where we can, get test kits. So the exposure is still an issue, and we have had a number of exposures in the fire departments over the last, well, actually, particularly over the last 3 months. There has been no major disruption, though, of the service levels. The number of motor vehicle accidents increased in to 76 in 2021, but again remained below the high incident rate of in 2019.
Nobody's going anywhere.
That's right. The MVAs represented 15% of our total calls. Fire alarms and carbon monoxide alarms did increase slightly. The major impact on these alarms remain to be in the Chester area, and that is because of the more residents having monitored fire alarm systems. With our new bylaw officer, we're trying to increase support with the fire departments to continue to report these so we can take action on the ones that are actually repetitive offenders, if you want to call. Number of multiple multiple alarm incidences did increase, and that just goes to show that the importance of our mutual aid support between our fire departments. We had 101 calls where we had what we call multiple alarms in 2021. You can see by the charts in the report breakdown by department, and also breakdown of the types of calls by the department. So overall, the departments met their service requirements and responsibilities according to the registration services. We had no major injuries and no major claims on the WCB reports this year. And our membership remains between 180 to 200 firefighters across the municipality. I'm open to any questions if you would.
Does anybody have a question?
just a curiosity one. It is the medical, just asking, I noticed Western Shore, just they is 68 and everyone else says it's such a low number. Do they respond to different type of calls? It's just a question like some people only call, I guess, the real different level.
Yes, they seem to have gone to a more sensitive response, if you want to call it. So they're responding to, well, it used to be the old level 4, but they are responding to more than critical calls right now. Yeah.
I thought that because it's quite a large number. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all. Just curious.
They were evaluating that recently, and I know the decision was made, but I think they're evaluating it again. So
yeah,
just the number of calls are very high there.
They are. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Any additional questions? Thanks, Bruce.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Alan, if I may, it's okay. With Bruce handy, I'm wondering if it's appropriate that I do ask that we go back to correspondence and I read the correspondence that I received this morning from my fire chief around fire service follow-ups. Is that?
Okay. Probably. Yeah, I don't, and nobody has any problem with that, do they? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll proceed. 2 items, again, from Chief Russell in correspondence to me today to be read or to be asked. Item 1, review of FAC Committee, Fire Advisory Committee. Going back to the September 23rd, 2021 council meeting, Deputy Warden Chatford made a motion 2021-360, moved by Deputy Warden Chatford, seconded by Councillor Church, that council approve the reestablishment of a Fire Service Advisory Committee as a committee of council and invite the fire services from the municipality to determine the terms of reference with all 7 fire services represented. All in favor, motion carried. I have not received any correspondence regarding this item, and as mentioned by the Deputy Warden at that meeting, this discussion dates back years to February of 2019, during a meeting at the East Chester Rec Hall, which this topic was brought forward as something that needs to be reviewed to help the lines of communication between the fire service and the municipality. My ask on this item is, where does this currently stand? How come we are 4 months after that motion and there's not been there has been no initial contact with the fire service? I'll move on to item number 2 and then we can discuss both items. Item 2, risk assessment. This project has been ongoing since 2019, and several people have put significant effort into trying to get this project completed. It is now 2022, and this project is still not complete. We had another round of detailed site visits in September 2021 by the consultant, yet it is now February 2022 with nothing to show from those visits. During the January 6th, 2022 Lunenburg East meeting, the fire services coordinator provided an update that he had spoken with the consultants before the holidays and that the updated report would be received in the next 2 weeks and distributed. Yet we have not received anything. Just looking for an update.
Okay. The risk thing maybe first, Bruce?
Yeah, I can talk about the risk assessment. We did do the second round of individual site visits to the departments. We compiled all of the information coming from that series of site visits, which was a lot of information. Information on calls, on operating procedures, on protocols and things. That was all submitted to the consultants, and with the intent of trying to address the questions from the steering committee on the first round of drafts. That has been done. I'm getting the feedback on amendments to the phase 1. They are complete. And on phase two, that's in operation right now. The consultants are rewriting that phase two. So I expect, we had a conference call last week, and we are expecting to get the second round of drafts within a couple of weeks now. So there's some more GIS work to be done, more mapping to be prepared. So that's an update at that point.
Yeah, it has gone on a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can see why they're somewhat impatient.
But we are on target now to come back with responses to all of the steering committee's questions on the first round. So that's where we stand.
So in a couple of weeks, we should have something.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And then my intent now is then to go back to the steering committee or the subcommittee and recommend the final report go forward. So.
Okay. Okay, Tina, anything else on that particular issue?
Sorry, just as, maybe. So when you say the final report, so the final report includes phase one and phase two, all phases.
And phase three, yeah.
Yep, all phases. Okay, so amendments to phase one, and they are currently rewriting. I missed the rest of the sentence there about phase two. So there's a couple of balls in the air at the same time with all three phases all completed, expected in a couple.
Yes, the steering committee met a while back. They had a number of questions, and Tara and I had prepared a list of all those questions. We went back to the consultants with the questions. Their addressing at that point was to meet again with all the fire departments. So we did that with two of the local consultants in Nova Scotia and compiled a lot of other information that was not provided during the first rounds. So it was all submitted, as I say, to the consultants for their second series of reviews. And that's been done. And now they're rewriting and amending the reports with the updates or the questions from the steering committee.
Okay, so great, that's great. So within a couple, looking out max a couple of weeks, not like a couple of weeks, then we'll, maybe a bit longer, but max a couple of weeks. So it could even be sooner than a couple of weeks. Final report back.
To our next step would be to go back to the
yes.
steering committee.
Yep, that's fine. I don't need to get it in 2 weeks.
And then once after that, if we're all okay
On the same page.
then
That's right.
Then we will go to council.
Perfect. Thank you. Got that.
Okay, so the other one was on the possible or potential reformation of the committee. I don't know that you have an answer for that, but.
I can jump in on that one.
Yeah.
And can I just go back to the steering committee for a second? I think we're expecting that report in a couple of weeks. And then once we get that report, we'll just take a quick look at it, but we'll have to schedule a meeting. I don't want to schedule the meeting until we have the report in hand. So it'll probably be more than a couple of weeks before we schedule that meeting with the steering committee. Our goal right now in the big picture is that sometime in April, we would be coming to council with the final report, and that would include the recommendations from the consultant and then the recommendation and prioritization recommended by the steering committee, so that council can review both the consultant's recommendations and the steering committee's recommendations and prioritization. And we're hoping to do that in April.
Okay.
For the FAC, it's on our to-do list. It's on the strategic plan, the work chart that we provided to council earlier in the fall. And so that FAC item is on there because we were focusing on the fire services review. That is on there in our work plan for 22-23. So we're hoping first quarter 22-23, we would have something coming back to you in a draft format. And that'll probably be towards the end of April that we'll have something to you with some options. Sorry, not draft format, some options for it. Have that coming back to you in April.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Abdallah.
Yeah, I just like to ask Bruce. So Bruce, so do you feel that the delays in this, a lot of it's back and forth amendments and things like that? Is that fair to say?
Well, let me take it from September on the site visits. There was a lot of extra documentation that had to be submitted and first by the fire departments and compiled here and then forwarded on to the consultants. So you can imagine the standard operating procedures, for example, the response protocols, all of that had to be compiled for each department and then forwarded to the consultants for their review. That resulted in some changes in the 19 classifications, if you want to call it, of response capabilities. So they are amending that classification. So that was all part of that process, but it takes time. It just does
Sure.
take time.
Yep. Thank you.
Tina?
Thank you. I do want to just make a comment or two around the item 1, review of FAC committee. And, I'm looking at this date and I'm embarrassed. I'm talking about myself. February of 2019, 20, 21, 22, it's now February 22. That's 3 years ago. And except, certainly with respect to councillors Vino and Wells, who were not in attendance at that Eastchester Rec meeting, that was a great meeting. That was a great evening. And there were all representatives and they were organized. And if you remember, they did have a spokesperson, I believe, but then there were questions and discussion from the floor. So that was 3 years ago that we committed to, opening up those lines or improving. We can all improve our communication, opening up and improving those lines of communication between the fire service and the municipality. So certainly hanging, our hat a little bit on that motion of September of last fall in terms of reestablishing, but, there's been, I don't know what's fallen off the table. I'm talking about myself, right? I was at that meeting 3 years ago. And so I think there's a lot of legitimacy to that question around why we're not doing something a little speedier, but I will have a discussion with my fire chief following this meeting. So just to see where we're at. So thank you for listening.
Okay, Floyd?
Just a comment on that. I know it's very sensitive and I understand that. And when I made that motion, just the intention is to move that meeting on to trying to get the fire advisory committee back together. I think it's essential for us. And I think the direction in that request was by invitation. We're not forcing anyone to come to these meetings. And I understand Terrence getting ready, and I appreciate that. At least have something to have the committee start on to make decisions. I think that's the road we're going down right now. But I think, I guess I'm looking at it this way. I don't want to upset the fire service, but I think they want to meet themselves. Maybe it's a different criteria than what we did before, and that's all fine and good, but we need to get them back in the room. But I certainly don't think if a couple of them decide not to come, I think we still need to move it forward. I'm pretty sure that was the direction. So, and I do appreciate Tara's doing some work on it. You guys are busy, but it'd be nice to see something soon. April's fine with me. I've waited this long. I can wait to April, and let's move it forward and give them guys a chance to get together and talk and have a good committee meetings and get it back on the road. So thank you. Thanks for bringing that up, Tina.
Yeah.
Just a comment on that, Floyd. I know what we want to try and do is to incorporate the representation, of course, with council, but also the fire services themselves are meeting now to try and find out how they want to proceed going forward. So we wanted to try and make sure that we can marry that up in providing a good line of communication. So
no, that's key and important to move it forward. I agree.
Okay. 8.3, polling district review. Who's leading that one?
I think I'm leading this one.
Are you?
I am just going to share my screen. Okay, can everybody see that? Polling.
I can.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So the Municipal Government Act requires municipalities to conduct a review of their polling district boundaries. And we have to do that in 2022. And we have to submit an application to the Utility and Review Board by the end of 2022 to confirm or alter the number of districts and the boundaries of those polling districts. They direct that the review should be done in 2 phases. So the first is to determine the number of districts or councilors. And then the second is to determine the boundaries for the proposed districts. And they request or require that both phases incorporate public consultation. The last review that we did was conducted by staff in 2014. And at that time, we reviewed the size of council and the number of polling districts. And excuse me, hold on a second. Prior to doing that, in September of 2013, council also received a report on the mayor and warden system. They directed staff to prepare a public engagement strategy, which we did. We went out and collected feedback and informed residents about the 2 systems, the mayor and the warden system, and the implications of each system. We had about 50 responses to that survey that we did, and 70% were in favor of keeping the warden system. So at that time, council decided to move forward with the warden system. And then we received a report on the size of council and did some public engagement there. Council, in the end, decided to stay with 7 councilors. And we ended up submitting an application to the Utility and Review Board to keep our 7 councilors in the existing boundaries. And the board approved that application. And we actually were commended for the amount of public engagement and the quality of public engagement that we did. So that was nice to hear that from the board. So as we look towards 2022 and having to do a boundary review, we've had a couple conversations with council and strategic plan conversations about doing this through a consultant. So this is just an overview of what we would be looking for from that consultant. So first of all, we would be asking them to look at the size of council, and some of the key considerations would be the desired size of council, style of council, the governance structure of council, the determination of the effective and efficient number of councilors. So just a little piece around how governance structure of council varies between municipal units. In some units like HRM, they have community councils that are comprised of several councilors from an area, and the regional councils given those community councils discretionary decision-making powers for that area. But in most units, including Municipality of Chester, the decision-making is reserved and kept for council as a whole. The district boundaries, so we are required to look at the distribution and delineation of our polling districts, and the board's established a plus or minus 10% variance from the average number of electors per district as the target that we're aiming for. They will consider variances in voter parity of up to plus or minus 25% in special circumstances, but the more you vary from that 10%, the more justification and evidence you need around factors such as community of interest and geography to go beyond that plus or minus 10%.
Yeah.
When considering the appropriate district boundaries, the UARB expects us to look at census data, electoral lists, property assessment information, building permit data. So those are all things that we will have the consultant look at and use. And then also census data from 2021, or the most recent census data is expected to be available in February. So we would have them incorporate that as well. All right, let me just see where I am. The one thing I should mention is that I missed on a slide here. I'm just going to go back 2 slides. Couple slides. Oh, where did I put it? No, it's okay. At one point, one of the things you've seen in there is that staff's going to begin an initial analysis of demographic data. We're actually going to have the consultant do all of that. So anywhere where it says staff will bring back another report, it actually will be the consultant that's doing that. The direction from the board focuses strongly on target variations and comparable voting parity between the districts. So we'll be using our 2020 final list of electors as an important tool as we get the consultants to look at that. Of course, we didn't have elections in Districts 2 and District 6 where the councillors were both acclaimed. So census data will probably be used as a proxy for electors in those districts. Looking at the mayor and warden system. So this is something that we would like some input from council on. So you know that the MGA enables council to switch from a mayor or a warden system to a mayor system. In 2014, the decision was made to keep the warden system. And those decisions have to be made at least 9 months prior to any election. So the benefit of consideration in the scope of a boundary review in looking at that is that having a mayor could alter council's decision regarding the number of councillors that you have. But we also should note that if a mayoral system is adopted in 2020 for the 2024 election, we can't go back to a warden system in the future. So just for discussion. So what we would propose having the consultant do is to do a review of the governance structure of the municipality, to collect and analyze statistics such as population, number of electors, building permit data, and comparisons should be made to other municipal governments. To develop an analysis of at least 3 options for governance, with one option being the status quo. Prepare and conduct a public engagement program on the 3 options, and recommend to municipal council the number of polling districts, the boundaries for each district, the number of councillors to represent the citizens of the municipality on municipal council. And then, so we'd be looking for 3 options on the number of elected officials as well. We'd be looking for them to map the boundary options, to develop a public engagement program, and to have a final report to council no later than November 3rd, 2022. The criteria that we're proposing to include in the RFP are provided to you. So 20% for comprehension and approach, 15% for their proposed engagement plan, 15% on their capabilities, resources, their qualifications, their experience and references, 20% on their work plan and schedule. All of that totals 70%. 30% of the evaluation would be on pricing for 100% total. And then we anticipate that this would be a low value procurement item that you would see come forward in the 2022-23 budget. It'll probably be about $40,000, and that's low value procurement, but we would go through the tender process for that. But that would, if it comes in as low value, that would be we'd also be allowed to do the 5% bonus for local suppliers. So options and recommendations, really the recommendation is that council authorize the scope of work for a consultant for the 2022 polling district and direct staff to prepare the request for proposals. The other option is that staff could do this internally, and then we would come back to you with a look at what does that look like, what does the timing look like, what does an engagement program look like, and how does that affect our work plan. So okay. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and there you go.
Okay, so I know you guys are busy, but I'm just going to say, traditionally, what we've done is we basically told staff we wanted it to stay the same, go out and make sure that the data supports it. You know, has anything changed enough that we have to even bother? So I guess, you know, I mean, I understand it that we're short-staffed and we got all kinds of stuff to do. And I know we have to do the public engagement. I was glad last time they thought we did a good job at that. I think the big question, I mean, I'm just making this wild assumption that nobody really thinks we should reduce or increase the size of council or anything. unless it's necessary. But the big question is, and always is every time, is whether or not we want to go down the road of the mayor warden system, or mayor system as opposed to the warden system. And I guess you need the public engagement on that issue as well, but you put more time and effort into it if you want to do something than if you don't want to do something. So I don't know if council has any opinions on any of that or not.
I do.
Do you? Okay.
I do. My understanding, I'm not sure if I'm right here. In your scope of consultant work, and I want to come back and see, do we really need a consultant? But develop an analysis of at least 3 options for governance. Is that a requirement of the Public Utilities Board?
No. We would, if council was to direct us to do that, it would be looking at the governance structure in terms of some different options. So status quo would be one of those. You could look at the mayor system. You could look at the, also you could have them look at the option of election at large as well. So but we don't have to, it's not a mandatory thing at all.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not opposed to the mayor system. I don't want to be mayor, by the way. I'm just trying to get a sense of what our minimum requirements are from public utilities. Public consultation. I don't think anyone wants to have more councillors. I think you're right, Ward. I don't think there's any. Anyway, the reason people, I think, wrote in, from what I'm reading, against the mayor system was they didn't want an extra councillor. If we went to a mayor, presumably we'd have a mayor and 6 councillors. So that would make a drastic change in boundaries.
Boundaries, yeah.
Yeah, and then we're getting into some real work. So do we have to prejudge it, or can we have the consultation with the public first? And put some options out. I mean, how would public consultation look?
I'm not sure. I don't even remember what we did the last time, to be honest with you. I know we put it on Facebook and stuff like that. I don't think we held any meetings per se.
No, I think what we did was advertised in the newsletter. We did a poll online. And it was really putting some information out there on what is a mayor system, what is a warden system. The benefit of doing it with a consultant and doing it at one time is that they could also put the information out there on what those boundaries might also, the fact that if you had a mayor system, you would probably look at going and changing your council, the number of councillors, right? So that you're not adding.
But you don't have to.
But you don't have to do that.
You could go mayor system at large and leave the boundaries and the districts the same and just increase by 1. I mean, whatever. So I guess it's the option. Sam?
Yeah, so what we've done sometimes in the past is taken an initial look at the numbers in the various districts to see how they fit in the plus minus 10%. And if they all fall, if we're within the range, then that gives us.
And we just left it alone.
Exactly. But if we find out that something is way off base, then we may decide, okay, we got to do something.
Yeah.
But I think that might inform the decision if we knew our percentages.
Yeah. Yeah, that I agree with that.
I agree with that too. Can I just ask someone else may have their hand up.
Yeah, Andre did. Yeah. So we'll let him go first.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say about the mayor discussion. I think that when we had a look at it back in 2014, I was there at that time, and I felt, I really think that we didn't do a stellar job of really engaging with the public. I think, putting it in a newsletter and some folks came on our website and 35 people said they didn't want a mayor, and we're like, okay, well, I guess we're not going to have a mayor. Like, that's pretty, I don't know if that's really a fulsome discussion, to be honest with you. And, if we're really serious about flushing it out, I think using a consultant is the only way to do that. We don't have the resources to really reach out and talk to people. And there's a big education piece because there is a lot of misinformation about what that would look like. And So if we really want to do a proper job, I think that's the only way that we can do it. So I really, that becomes the question is, because I agree, if we're kind of thinking we're going to keep it, the size of council the same, assuming that, there hasn't been any big population swings, which I doubt very much there have been, we could make the decision very quickly that, we'll do some, basic level study and send it in and keep it the status quo, which, I think, you could argue that seems oddly self-serving. So I would say, that's the question I think this council needs to answer is, do we want to have a more fulsome discussion on a mayor versus a ward? And if the answer is no, then we do it the easy way. And if it's not, then we do it the other way. And I don't know that there's any other question to answer.
Yeah, I think that's the big one, really. And I think the last go round, it was relatively obvious that council didn't even want to go down the road. So, I don't know if they've changed. I think I supported it. Nobody else did. But anyway, Derek.
What did you support last time, a mayor?
Well, I would have been open to the discussion about the mayor system last time.
Yeah, and I'm open to the discussion too. I'm not sure I want to go down the road, but I'd like to have the discussion. And I'd like to somehow engage the public in it. But I would want to open, if we're talking about mayor, I'd want to say a mayor and 6 councillors, and that would be a major change. And whether we have the will or wish to do that. My concern with the consultant is, where's the consultant going to come from? What kind of a feel for the community does he have? Because you really have to have a feel for the different communities, I think, to do a proper study, and to bring somebody in that has no knowledge of the subtleties in our community, I think would be not a good thing.
Floyd, you had your hand up, or?
Yeah.
And then Dan. Yeah.
Well, I guess I don't have a problem going down the road talking about it, but I think the status quo has worked quite well. I haven't heard a word about anyone asking about a mayor or interested or any concerns over the system we have. I think the reason I like the warden system is we get to pick someone who has some experience. And I know all new people come in with no experience. I get all that. But at least having the opportunity to pick a councillor that's been there for a while and the experience, I think it's an advantage for our municipality. That's my personal opinion. And I know that can, excuse me, that can be argued one way or another. Everyone's voted in new, and there's mayors, Halifax comes in new and all that, but I just think it gives us an advantage, and our municipality has done quite well over the past number of years. We're in a real good position. I don't see a cry for change or anything like that. So, but having the discussion, I have no problem having that discussion, but I just think that our system and our council works well. So that's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, Dan and then Andre. Yeah.
Yeah, so just a quick comment on a role of a consultant. I think I would mirror the comments that the more significant the change, the more significant the level of effort that's required. Yeah. And the terms of reference for a consultant would describe the community engagement that's required to ensure that any advice that a consultant provides to council is informed with that community knowledge. So it could include public meetings. It could include interviewing each council member. It could include other techniques to make sure that they're informed on local knowledge before they provide advice.
Okay, thank you. Andre? And Tina?
Yeah, I'll just say that, first, I realize that we haven't had a lot of complaints about our system, but I don't think we should ever mistake apathy for success, because that can happen sometimes. And I think, people just maybe aren't overly engaged or even really think that there's an option. I think it's easy to kind of not really ponder that very much if you're just an ordinary person out there, and that doesn't even really engage much with council. So I don't know if I would use that as a measurable, but a lot of municipalities are moving towards a mayor system, because a mayor will bring you know, a more fulsome, I guess, well, you're elected by at large, by the entire community and not just one district. So you tend to bring more vision that's municipal wide, which can change the whole mood in council, I think. And I've been watching a lot of other council meetings with mayors, and it is a different dynamic because of the way that a mayor is elected. And it's not to take anything detract from our system or the leadership we have. It's just the nature of what it is. So, you know, I you know, if this council decided to engage a consultant, which is, you know, probably not going to be a huge expense, you know, I wouldn't be opposed to having a more fulsome a discussion on it. And, you know, I put this topic to bed once and for all. Like, I really didn't feel like we did I felt that the job we did in 2014 was a bit lackluster, to be honest with you. So, you know, if we're really serious about maybe having a look at this, I think this is the only way to answer it.
Okay, thank you. Tina?
Thank you. Yes, I would just agree with what Andre has just stated. I was interested and curious and looking for full engagement by the community members, you know, the first go round back in 2014. And that was about a year and a half after I would have been knocking on doors to a fairly, you know, great extent. And that is something that I heard. And I think not sure, I'd have to go back in my notes, but I might have been the person that brought it to the table for the beginning discussions way back at that time, because I did hear it. And my response back to individuals when we were having conversations at that time was that I was able to recall on my experience of when the District of Lunenburg first had the discussions from the grassroots. And believe it or not, that started with a board of trade, a community economic development group down in Riverport, Matt Durnford. And I know that because I was with the group and with the RDA at the time. And that's where that grassroots movement started to look at a mayoral system in the District of Lunenburg. And I think it had merit for why it started there and how it grew and the result, if you will. In 2016 and 2020, I certainly wasn't knocking on doors to the extent of other councillors around the table. And in the last couple of years, certainly our public events and community stops have been curtailed because of COVID. But I do continue to hear, not to a large extent, if you will, but just out of curiosity and the reasoning around why, again, the District of Lunenburg, which is on one side of me, West Hants is on the other side, and the District of Kings is on the other side. So we're all, you know, they're looking at those systems, have those systems and looking at those systems. So yeah, no, I'd like to explore it.
Abdallah.
I guess my biggest question is, I don't see the reasoning in, if you change to a mayor system, you can't go back, but you can go forward and change it, but you can't go back. I don't, that to me doesn't make sense. And I actually, Derek made the point that I was going to make, that a consultant to me he looks at it forensically, I guess. And that's what consultants are supposed to do. But I think we need to, I know, and it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it's taxpayers' money as well for consultant fees. And if it is it that important that we hire a consultant? Is that a burning issue here? Just my 2 cents.
I think it's Dan's going to speak, but I think from the staff perspective, it's just another job they don't have time to give full attention to. Dan?
Yeah, and there's one other point. I think the more significant and dramatic the change that might occur, likely more passion and emotion enters into the discussion in community. And for those kind of decisions around representation, it's I think it's a best practice to have staff not seen to be part of it, or so it's seen to be more objective, and it protects staff, I guess, from those potentially those more compassionate or emotional discussions that might occur. So I think the more ambitious or the more dramatic the advice that council has in terms of community engagements, the more I'm inclined to say strongly recommend, I think, use a third party to do that work for you.
Yeah. Okay. So just how difficult would it be for us to get the data on population changes? Because I mean, I think that's what, you know, that's one piece of it that we might not have to go too deep into if unless somebody thinks we should change the number of councillors and change the district boundaries, which I've not heard from anybody.
If I can, I recall asking Pam after the last election for that data, and so I just found it in my email. So I'll share my screen, but I would say that we are in committee of the whole. I'd probably like to verify this afterwards, but I'll pull up my screen and show you what. I'll try to.
If we don't have any interest in changing the number of councillors or the districts, then it's a whole other question whether you get down the mayor road and all those sorts of things. Yeah, Derek, sorry.
No, just back to the issue of the consultant. I appreciate what Dan was saying about that. And I don't think 40,000 is going to cover it. If we get into a major consultation on mayor versus warden and do a major public consultation with an outside consultant, I can't see you doing it for $40,000. You're going to get into, I think we got to make the decision. Do we want to explore warden versus mayor? Because I think the cost is going to get, I'm not saying it's not worth it, but I think it's going to be significant.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's it. I think a little direction on just where do we want to go anyway would be helpful before we start.
I agree, Warden. I guess we're on the same page there.
Yeah. So you're going to pull that up, Dan?
Yeah, I'll try.
I mean, the big thing is are there that significant a difference between one district and another outside the 10%?
So do you see the spreadsheet?
Yep.
Yeah. So this was after the 2020 election. And the first chart to, I guess, your left is the number of voters, which I think is the
I think that's the way they
primary consideration. I'd asked for the number of dwelling units as well to give us a sense of what districts might be growing more rapidly. And I think they both kind of mirror each other. And so you can see the difference between the 2016 and the 2020 election, particularly growth, you see growth, particularly in districts 1 and 2. So if that, 8% in District 2 in terms of growth of the number of voters. If I'm doing the math correctly and you take the 8,709 and you add 10% or subtract 10%, I think the range is about 1,120 on the low end. And so we're getting very close to being below 10% in districts, a couple of districts, number 4, number 7. And the high end is coincidentally, I think 1,368. So District 1 would probably be nudged over the 10% in the 2024 election. So we're certainly pushing the 10% plus or minus.
Yeah.
Again, it depends on growth patterns. So the number of dwelling unit just gives you a sense of the communities that are experiencing a little more growth in dwelling units. So that's part of the challenge is you're trying to not just look at the historical number of voters, but you're trying to be a little prospective and identifying where you think changes might occur for the next 2 elections, 2024 and 2028. So we're getting close, certainly, to having to make some boundary changes. And to the discussion by a number of council members, if you went with a mayor at large and wanted to stay with 7 votes around the council table, of course, that would make it, I think, mandatory to look at the boundary changes for the polling districts.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Try to drop my share screen now.
Remind me where District 2 is. Which one is 2?
Hubbard's.
Hubbard's. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So I think what we're seeing is growth in the Aspestogan, which is
Yeah.
what we've discussed at this table before, and we're about to go into a workshop where we're going to discuss, servicing communities in our municipality. And one of the ones that is probably going to be a focus is Hubbard's area, because we know that, we're having a highway twin to that area, and we expect to see a lot of growth there. And those two communities, mine and Floyd's, are already on the higher end of the spectrum. And I fully expect that, especially if we service those areas in the future, in the next 8 years, we're going to see amazing growth there. So, I think, something's going to have to change, probably, it sounds like, by what Dan's just said.
Yeah, just a question. That's the voters list, is not the population census. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Okay, so the new census information will help to, well, it'll tell you whether there's any difference in between the two again. Anyway, we need to decide something. So we want to hire a consultant. Do we want to get down the big path, or we want to not get down the big path? Yeah, Sharon.
Yeah, let's get the census data first, have a look at it. And if, it's out of line, let's look at it then to see if we want to hire a consultant. Is that too difficult to get?
Well, it's not out yet. It's coming out at some point, but we don't have it.
Yeah, it probably won't be out until sometime towards the end of February. So that would probably be March before we could get that in front of council. And then we're just pushing timelines if we wait for the census data. Yeah.
What do we want to do?
Long. I don't think that's too long to wait at the end of February.
Anybody else have an opinion?
So we put a proposal out for a consultant. How long does it take to put the proposal together? We got to go out with we just don't call a consultant. We got to go out with a
yeah, we got to do something.
Proposal.
So if committee of the whole gave that recommendation today to council, we would probably start putting something together so that we could be ready to go out, shortly after council approves it. And then you'd probably be looking at sometime mid-March before those would come back and we'd review them. And so we're hoping that by the end of March, we could have something in front of council on the consultant for approval. And that would let them start in April, hopefully.
Yes, Floyd.
Yeah, so are we going up with this proposal? Are we taking the recommendations made by staff this morning, all those recommendations? Because I don't agree with.
Well, that's what we need to determine. And
yeah, I just don't see the need to change the way we do business and different, I don't know, the governance structure and all that. I'm not anyway. I'm only one person, but I just see that as hiring a consultant to do unnecessary work. That's my own opinion.
Yeah. And when it comes to the polling districts, though, the numbers will dictate the direction in which we have to go.
They will. If I remember right, Sam maybe knows more than I do here, but it's not that long ago that we took part of District 1, which is Blanford, and moved their area towards Chester. Is that right, Sam? And give them more, so they didn't have enough people. And now that Blanford has too many people, it makes sense to take that and bring it back and give Chester more people. That's just what seems to make sense.
Well, there's minor adjustments. Yeah, we've done that.
And I think I think that's an easy fix. I don't think that's something that needs to spend $50,000 or $60,000 for a consultant. That's me. I think a lot of time we pay $50,000, $80,000 consultants and shove it in a cupboard somewhere and don't use half of it. And I think it's a waste of taxpayers' money at sometimes in some of these issues and unnecessary. I know staff's busy, but maybe we need to look at narrowing the scope of work that we need done. That's my
Well,
opinion.
well, I just was gonna say, this. How are we gonna put an RFP out? We don't even know what we want in the RFP.
Yeah.
Well,
you might want to wait until next week and think it over. Derek?
No, Floyd, I agree with Floyd. If we're just going to tweak it, there's no problem to take 25 voters from District 1 and put it in District 3. I mean, we could go out and show where the line should be, take in 20, 30 people to get the numbers within the 10%. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
We need a consultant if we're going to be looking at mayor versus warden. I think that's the only time we need a consultant.
That's the big one. Yeah.
And if I think we should make that decision, and that'll help us. And if we make that decision, we need a consultant.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about it. So you want to wait till next week? To think it over? Okay. Done. We'll put it on the council agenda for next week.
Okay.
Okay, so I think I've got what? Strategic planning workshop. Dan, we're trying to plan one. We're looking at February 15th if possible, but if that date doesn't work, we've got to pick a different one.
Yeah, so staff earlier this week, we started populating the next few council agendas for February, March. And Tim is getting close to be ready to start the discussion related to both capital and operating budget. We could, as early as February 17th, have an initial discussion on capital budget. But it would be our preference to have a workshop on strategic priorities before the budget process. So a couple of options there. If we want to start budget discussions on February 17th, then maybe a workshop. I think Tara was proposing maybe the Tuesday, the 15th. We could do a later afternoon workshop, or we could push the process back and use our regular council meetings. That would delay the budget process.
I think strategic plan should be a separate item. Are people available on the 15th? I guess that's the big question.
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm looking at my schedule. If it's late in the day, I could be, I have something going on earlier at work. But if it was later on in the day, I could see if I can be available.
Mid-afternoon, late afternoon?
Yeah, late afternoon for me.
Late afternoon.
What are you talking about time-wise? How many hours are we looking at?
A couple.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. Yeah. Not the whole day.
Sharon,
No.
would 3 to 5 work for you, Sharon? Do you
Well,
think?
it would, but I don't, others, that would be good.
What about you, Andre?
Late afternoon is okay. And, also I would say that sometimes we have fairly light committee of the whole agendas. And if we don't have anything that requires deliberation, we could always
Tack it on. Yeah.
Not tack it on, delete the cow and put it in there.
Well,
we don't have to have a meeting for no reason.
I
agree there.
I haven't seen the agenda for next COW yet, so I just can't comment on it.
Well, next COW is the 17th, and that's the capital budget.
Oh, so we're adding
that
capital
would
budget to that.
Yeah. So it's
That's
just
what-
getting the strategic priorities out ahead of the budgeting process. I suppose we could have them on the 17th and just react. We staff would be able to react to both direction from council on priorities and capital budget. So that would be an option, is to just plan for the 17th in the morning to be both the strategic priorities and a capital budget. It would be the full morning. Yeah, that's an option.
That's my preference.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I don't
I
care
just
what.
want to remind people that last time when we do all the stuff one on top of the other, we were not happy a lot of times.
Now you start to lose your focus.
Well, we're not. I might as well say it now.
No, you lose your focus after a bit.
Yeah, and people like to have time to think about one before they do the other.
Well, I agree with that statement. Usually your priorities would happen with time enough to have it reflected in the budget.
Think
So,
about it.
it's kind of hard to do them both at the same time. The strategic priorities should be more of an update to what we already know.
Yeah.
So it hopefully shouldn't take too long. But, oftentimes we fill our cow agendas with things that don't require deliberation, and then they should be just put straight to council probably.
Well, respecting everyone's workday, why don't we do Tuesday evening?
Well,
that
but
was
that's
working.
gonna work, right, that's all. Why not 4 o'clock on the 15th?
Okay.
That should work for
Fine.
everybody. 4 o'clock on the 15th. Okay, that's when we're doing it.
I have a question about the material for that session. Again, I know it's, it's only February the 3rd, and I'm being respectful. When is there a chance or possibility that we'll be receiving that information to prepare for 4 o'clock on the 15th?
I can have that out next Thursday. Most of it'll probably be it'll probably be the short slideshow, and then the rest of it will just be the strategic plan that we currently have. We'll make sure it gets updated.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm unaware of any other items on the agenda.
And we've just received some texts from Jonathan. Our Stacy Muse is the EXP presenter,
Yeah.
and he got caught in the power outage in Dartmouth.
Oh, yeah.
All the street lights signals are down, so he was intending to present from home and has no power. So he's on his way to his office, I think in Halifax, and he's given us an ETA of 10:30.
That's perfect.
So it would be a break till 10:30 and then start with Stacy.
Well, that's all you can do, isn't it? It's not much else you can do.
Yeah, and we may finish early, but my max out time, so I assume we'll be finishing on time is 12. So
Yeah.
I don't want to be shortchanged on any information, and my leave Chester to get to something else is 12. So thanks.
We should be good.
Thank
Well,
you.
anyway, he's doing what he can. That's all he can do. So we'll adjourn, a motion to adjourn and reconvene for the workshop at 10:30.
So
Okay.
moved.
Can I
Second.
just-
Discussion.
Agree. Can I go off the meeting and go back